What's up, everybody? So, it's me, Rooster Mods, again. I'm here with another re-upload of one of my old In The Endrows podcast episodes. In case you're not aware, I made these podcasts a while back, all dating all the way back to FS19. So some of this content might look a little old, but I wanted to get them re-uploaded to my new channel. And yeah, it's something I'd like to do in the future. So, without further ado, enjoy. Hey guys, welcome back to the In The Endrows podcast, the podcast where we talk to farmers and modders alike. This week, I'm going to be interviewing JMF Modding, or Mark Perry. Say hey, Mark.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
We're doing pretty good. I'm excited to have you on the show. I think you're the second guest now, so I was looking for some more people, and you were pretty open to it. I was really happy to talk to you. So, let's start off with some. Oh, awesome. We'll start off with some introductions. I'm Rooster. I run Rooster Mods, and this is we've taught Mark JMF Modding. Let's start off with let's do our first question. Let's just jump right into the interview. So, how about you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, whatever you feel like talking about, and then kind of your history with farming. Let's start with that.
All right. So I'm from the northeast corner of the United States. I'm up in New Hampshire. And basically I was born on a very small dairy farm. My father's still doing it. He's 63 years old. Our barn holds 26 cows. And so
Wow.
that's sort of my whole background with farming is I grew up in a city. It was a town with a lot of farms in the 70s, and he that's what he built. It was an overgrown 4-H project.
Really?
My grandfather bought the farm in 1964. He was a factory worker, and it was like a hobby farm for him. He wanted to be able to do that.
Oh wow. So you
My
kind of
father got hit.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, I was just gonna say it sounds like you started from the ground up in the '60s. That's pretty impressive.
Well, yeah, when they bought it, my father was still just a little kid. He got his milking license in 1974. It was actually before he had his driver's license. He had a milk license. And they built this little barn in '77, I believe it was, all built from wood on the farm. It's just a small little farm. I envy all these. I see these big, beautiful farms and everything else, but I mean it's all about what you grew up around.
Yeah. Farming's farming.
So, oh yeah. So yeah, I mean that's my background is with a little bit older equipment than what a lot of people might be used to.
Sure.
And so that's when I started working a little bit with FS19, it was like, okay, well, what's lacking in this? And it was stuff based around what I wanted to see, what I wanted to.
Right.
I
Right.
joke that I make it's for me, and I like sharing them with people because that's what keeps me driven on this stuff and what I find exciting.
Right, for sure. You can't do this if you don't have some sort of passion for it, right?
Exactly.
Because for most of us, it's this is really passion driven. A lot of people make what they care about and they make what they know. And obviously for you, that's smaller equipment. That's stuff you probably grew up around. Would you like to? Can you tell us a little bit about some of the equipment you remember using, or you kind of know and grew up around?
Oh yeah, well, so it's in the past. So I'm 29. In the past 30 years of me being around, my father's equipment hasn't changed a whole heck of a lot. But it's our big tractor for the longest time growing up was an Alice Chalmers 80, which is I think factory rated at about 85, which everything up here gets still turned up some.
Right.
And I remember he bought, when I was a kid, a 3688 International, which, is still considered a
Mm-hmm.
pretty good sized tractor. And I
Sure.
remember we had the worst luck with it. It was really worn out. Uh, and we're on wet ground where everything is soup.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've got probably 100 acres of swamp directly behind my house.
Wow.
It's bad. So a big two-wheel drive Alice Chalmers, International at 3688, it got stuck here.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we got some newer stuff he's bought over the years now. He's got a newer Agco
Mm-hmm.
LT85, which is still it's a small piece, and a John Deere 6430.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, some nice newer stuff. We make about 200 acres of hay that we sell the majority of.
Oh, nice. Good.
So
Square
it's
bales, I'm assuming.
we do square and round.
Okay. Okay.
Try to do as much of the round as we can.
Nice. Yeah, that's a lot easier to deal with than the square, isn't it?
Oh, you ain't kidding. I mean,
Nope.
we've got a decent method worked out for squares where
Mm-hmm.
you fill a wagon or two full of them, and people come and they'll unload from the wagon right into their truck in the field. Charge them a little bit less so we don't have to haul them anywhere. And then
Sure.
drag home the wagons, no matter how full, kick the rest into our barn for our animals, and
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
works out.
Nice. So I know you
Uh,
mentioned dairy, right?
yep.
And do you do is there anything else? Do you do any grain crops at all, or is the entire operation focused around the dairy aspect?
It's all the dairy.
Gotcha.
So yeah, we do some hay, and we do probably 30 or 40 acres of corn, depending on the year,
Yep.
that we chop and make corn silage with,
Very nice. Very nice.
and that's all goes directly into our herd. None of that's sold.
Wow. Okay. So
So
it's all to feed. It's all about the milk.
yep,
Yep. Nice. What kind of chopper do you use?
we've got a John Deere 3950 pull type.
Ah, nice.
Yep, with the two-row head.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I was a kid, I remember my father went up and we picked up a Richardson high dump, which is very similar to the Jiffy high dump that I just actually released on my page, because it was one of those things like, man, I really like to have this, and I found the model in a matter of time to get it all tweaked up. But
No, that's awesome. People are really liking that.
yep, no, I'm getting a lot of really positive stuff. I'm not saying it's the best. It's an old convert from, I think, 13.
Yeah, it's been around for a while.
It could use some love in the model department. Modeling is not my forte.
Right.
I try to play to my strengths the best that I can,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm making a certain kind of equipment,
Mm-hmm.
or converting stuff and getting it going for 19. And the guys that I cater to, everyone seems to really enjoy it because it's different. It's not as much as I love the big STS combines, and I always have a game save of a big farm.
Right.
I've always got something going for a small farm, and that's
That's
part
awesome.
of my drive.
No, that's
Yep.
awesome. So speaking of that, how did you come around to learning about Farming Simulator? Can you tell us kind of how you stumbled into this game?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I'll back it up a little bit on a whole, the computer and gaming.
Sure, sure.
So growing up, at some point my parents split, and my father had the big dairy farm, my mother didn't.
Right.
Well, when I was living at my father's, we had shared custody, all that happy stuff.
Mhm.
My father, we never had internet.
Yeah.
I moved out of my father's in, I think, 2014, and he still didn't have internet at that point. I mean, we had nothing. You had TV and you had cable, but I mean, I didn't have any gaming system. At my mother's house, I had, PlayStation growing up, and then I wound up with a computer,
Mm-hmm.
and I got into I'm a huge Grand Theft Auto fanboy. It's terrible. I hate to admit it. But was doing GTA San Andreas modding.
Really?
Probably Yeah, it was 07, 08, 09, that time.
Wow. Okay.
Uh, Nothing. Once again, I didn't do modeling.
Right.
A lot of, their version of XML editing.
Sure.
Um, and after college, I drifted out of that. I wound up basically living full time at my father's through college. And so all the game stuff that all kind of went behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was into trucks and everything else for many years. Still am. I just bought another motor today.
Ooh, what's
It's
that?
an addiction. Um, yeah, I've got a slew of trucks, and I can go for probably an hour alone on trucks. Uh,
Tell us about a couple of your favorites. Just give a
um,
quick shout out
I've
to those.
I've got a '91 Ford Ranger,
Mm-hmm.
Ranger. It's on 1 ton F350 axles with a 351 Windsor out of a '84 F250 that's got 39.5 Super Swampers on it. It's built for playing in the woods, playing in the mud out here.
Nice.
Um, then I've got a 1967 Kaiser M715, which is what they call a 5/4 ton military truck. Convertible top, full down windshield, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
Uh, and that's in need of a heart transplant. The original motor in it is done. So, yep, I'm sourcing a motor for that to get that one back going. And I mean, I've got a fleet
Oh, that's
between
cool.
all the stuff that I use for helping my father. I'll have trucks that are just basically loaded with tools at all times.
Right.
Because on a farm that's only milking 26 cows, there's not a lot of room for somebody like me to be able to jump in and continue the farm thing beside him.
Right.
So I do a lot of support work. I'm basically the farm mechanic. Anything
Mm-hmm.
needs to be worked on, I go up and I do all that.
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha.
but anyway, so back to how that all relates into FS.
Yeah. 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 Let's
So
go there.
at some point, when I moved out of my father's place and I got my own place for the first time, oh man, I got internet again. And I bought an Xbox 360,
Mm-hmm.
and man, that was awesome. It was back into that a little bit. Um, but I wound up poking through the store one day, and I'm like, oh, I believe it was FS13. Um, it was 13 or 15 was on Xbox, and they were pushing it pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, yeah, sure, I'll buy that. And so, the virtual download. All right, that was cool. And then I think it must have been 13. And then I wound up downloading 15. I played through that for 2 years on console. And then I got 17 when it came out. I played about a year on console with 17. And I said, I've got this crummy old laptop. I'm going to try putting the PC version on this because I saw pictures and I started down the mod rabbit hole because 17 I think was the first year of mods on console.
Yeah, I believe so. We
And
might be incorrect, but I think so.
I believe that it was the first year, so I got a taste of it. It brought me back to having all my custom vehicles and stuff in San Andreas. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, let me see this. And
Mm-hmm.
I went one night, I started looking, and I saw Automokes, and I fell in love. And I was just like, that's what I'm missing. I love playing on Old Stream Farm. That's a Black Sheep modding map. I love that.
Yeah.
I got into all the European stuff because that's what was available to me.
Sure.
But once I saw the opportunities of American modding a PC, I was like, well, I've got to do this.
Yeah.
So I put it on this laptop, and I won't say it ran it. It may have walked it, but it usually crawled it.
Yeah.
And it was bad. And so I said, well, I need a better computer.
Uh-huh.
And I'll tell this about anybody because there's so much talk. Well, will this computer run this? Will that computer run this? My PC that I'm playing on and I'm modding on, I
Mm-hmm.
bought for $200. It was a used one from work. It was an engineering computer.
Mm-hmm.
This thing's got a 4-core Xenon processor, which Xenon is a server processor.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
even like
No, it doesn't have high core speeds at all. It's not made for gaming.
It really isn't, but it's got a ton of RAM. It came with a ton of RAM. It came with a solid state. So I bought it for $200. I put a GTX 750 in it, and man, I was off to the races. I was playing FS17, and this is great. This is great. I loved it.
Yeah.
I put on a bunch of different maps on 17 on PC, but I always went back to automotives. That was one that drew me in. You know, I learned all about, you can add all these silos, and actual uprights, the way that they're supposed to be, all this stuff. I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So, and then FS19 was coming up.
Yep.
Okay, this is cool because now you have the ability to do, more placeable. They're trying to work it around that. And I remember, when I first heard about that, I'm getting it all hyped up in my head about what is farm building really going to be like.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I pre-ordered and I remember downloading it that day and going, this is disappointing.
I think a few people felt that way.
And within the first week, they had a bunch of patches out.
Yep.
And I will give them a ton of credit. They probably had to meet some sort of release date, and they pushed it out knowing that there was going to be some heavy patches coming through.
That's how a lot of games go these days. Yeah.
Oh, believe me, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it was a little disappointing, but at the same time, it was so cool. It was so new. Before there was any maps out, before there was any real mods out, I'm sitting there playing on Ravenport, trying to build my farm how I want to. And, we mud our way through it.
Yeah.
The first couple maps come out, I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll try this. But so this kind of transitions into how modding starts for me. In the early days, there wasn't really a whole lot of mods available. Or I'd find something, I really like to tweak this. And so I learned, the XML editing on this isn't that much different than what I was used to doing in GTA days.
Oh, really?
Open a file, actually a lot more straightforward than the old stuff was. Open the file, figure out where everything is, okay, edit these numbers, this is what this will do. Giants has actually done a pretty decent job of making XML self-explanatory.
They have.
And I don't know why or whatever. When I first started modding, I don't know if I just didn't have Notepad++ or what. I remember I went and I downloaded a different program to be able to open up all these XML files. I wound up with a program called XML Notepad 2007. And I joke that, people think, well, what, are you getting some kickback? Because the way that I'll tell people about this is, no, I love this program because it makes it categories with Dropbox.
Right.
Everything is so super straightforward that even I can do XML edit. It's, I love it.
Nice.
I still use Pad++ for a ton of other stuff, but for your general, I want to go into this trailer, I need to edit these nodes and that, I fell into that. And so that's what it started as, was, okay, trailers. I want to increase the capacity. Well, I increased the capacity so much, now it's hard for it to move. Okay, how do I script this? How do I script that? And
Right. Just trial and error. That's kind of how it goes. So
a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you didn't really start modding until 19 then, right?
Correct.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, it sounds like a story I've heard before. You just kind of like, you want something, and so you figure you'll try to do it yourself. But unlike a lot of other stories I've heard, you've had experience with modding since, 2008, 2009, you said, with Grand Theft Auto. So you actually kind of came into this understanding how it works a little bit. You're familiar with XML style systems, which is really interesting.
Yep. No, I mean, and um, I know that a lot of people look down through like a wheel configuration in not GE, but in an XML, and it's in Greek. I mean, it's some of it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Um, it's very, very similar to what GTA San Andreas was in 2008.
Wow, I didn't
Um,
know that.
you know, how the dampening and everything else, it's all basic suspension stuff.
Cool.
Uh, so I mean, part of my stuff with trucks is building suspension.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when I look at something like dampening and all these things, oh yeah, I'm familiar with all these terms because this is all relevant to real world applications. It may not be as straightforward to somebody else who's never had to deal with it, um, but it seems to click well enough for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's really cool. So, do you remember how you found out about the Facebook side of things? Because I
Yeah,
don't even know if I remember how I found out about it. I think I just did a bunch of searching. But if you search around on if you just do Google searches, eventually you end up on Facebook pages, and that's kind of where the community is centered around. So, do you remember how you found out about that?
can't say that I'm 100% certain. I
Sure.
believe I started figuring out about Facebook groups for video games. Um, whether it was always about what's hot and new. I was in a Far Cry one. I was in all these different ones at different points.
Yeah.
Um, and so I searched out something. Um, it must have been for FS17. Um, and that's I think about the time that I found old school farming.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple that I've been in long term. Um, that one seems to be one of the most consistent for me.
For
Um,
sure.
Randy, the guy that runs it, runs a very tight ship. No drama, BS.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just keep it about the modding because that's what really matters. That's why we're there. We're not there for. I can go find plenty of drama on Facebook without going to a farm sim group.
Yeah,
Um,
let's let my games be games and let my family be drama, and let's keep those separate. I'm here to relax and have a good time.
exactly.
Yep.
So yeah, no, and that's you know, once I found a couple of really good groups to follow,
Mm-hmm.
it was every day. Get home from work, do a couple things, but sit down, go through Facebook. Okay, look in this group. What's in the announcements today? You have like three or four groups, and then that expands and sprawls, and it peaked and plateaued at some point here, and there's still a lot of good stuff being released on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I believe that it's sort of plateaued at this point because
Yeah.
there's only so much stuff that you can convert from 17,
Yep.
and there's only so much really new content coming out.
Yeah. I remember when I was talking with Deniz. I remember we talked about how the community is kind of parabolic because he's been around in this for a while, and I think we're kind of at a lower point or a leveled off point right now for community
Yep.
engagement. I mean, I can just tell from my page, like, stuff doesn't get as much attention as it used to, and that's the kind of like the cycle of that's a game's life cycle, right? I mean, when a game just launches, there's a whole ton of engagement and people around it, but we're kind of at a lower point right now because Farming Sim 19 has been around for a year longer than most farming sim games have. So we've
Right.
really leveled off here.
Well, and it depends on your content.
Right.
Uh, I joke that I'm a niche market of a niche game because let's face it, this isn't. I know that Farm Sim is growing very tremendously, but it's not. It's not a GTA. It's not Call of Duty.
No.
It's a niche game for certain people. You got to have an interest in.
Yep.
Um, and so really, where I started out doing a little bit of modding for myself.
Yeah.
Um, and then what I wound up doing is I said, I love all these barns. There's all these wonderful barns. They're all freestalls. Now, if you're not familiar with dairy much, you wouldn't necessarily know the difference. I grew up working in a tie stall barn. And what a tie stall barn means is that you have rows of stalls
Mm-hmm.
in the barn. The cows come in, they get latched in, whether it be with a stanchion or we use a collar with just a tie hook to them.
Right.
And so they have their stall, they have their happy space. When you do milking, you bring your machines down in, you hang them between the cows, you milk, one cow, then the other, then move the machine, and you work your way down the barn. So you're moving the machine to the animal versus a freestall, which that's what the base game is, and what I would say 99% of the farms and barns are is freestalls where you have big loose housing of animals, and you have a
Mm-hmm.
feeding area,
Yep.
but then you have a parlor, or in the case of farm sim, there's a lot of use of the robotic. Um, but you have a parlor or a robotic milker of some sort, and the animal goes to where the milking station is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's just two different ways to do it. Um, so being my father, being an old school person, tie stalls are what he believes to be the superior way of doing it, and that can cause all sorts of disagreement with people, especially ones that watch this now will tell me that I'm a fool. My father's a dinosaur, which is true. Um, but you look in the cold states. We're in New Hampshire. We're a cold state. Um, you look at the state of Wisconsin. State of Wisconsin has still, I think, 75% usage of tie stalls. There's something ridiculous like that because in the cold weather they're a lot smaller built
Mm-hmm.
and they hold heat better.
Mm.
Um,
I
I
didn't know that.
digress a little bit here.
No, that's cool.
So um, that was one of the things of, well, I want something that's familiar to me. I want a tie stall barn. And they didn't have any of them.
Yeah.
So I got poking around, and I think it was on a map called like Richland County. I think they had a really nice barn, and I wound up later realizing it was a CWJ barn, I believe. Um, and so I figured out how to export that from the map, make it its own thing. Okay. And then I often joke, I'm not a modeler. I don't like 3D modeling personally. I'm just not good at it.
Sure.
So I will take and I will go through other stuff and find all the pieces I need. I can assemble the Legos. You hand me all the Legos, I can assemble them. I can't make the actual pieces.
Right.
Um, so I mean, I started out, okay, here's the stalls. I figured out the stalls and how I could put those in and how to move all the trigger points.
Mm-hmm.
Very simplistic. Um, I don't think I even knew how to do. I know I didn't know how to do nav meshes. I picked a barn that I like the nav mesh on.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Lone Oak barn used for most of my early stuff, and I just worked around that.
Wow. Okay.
And the original one that I first did, it got released. It was bad. I look back now, and it's a horror show. But I remember, I had to start a MediaFire account.
Mm-hmm.
I had to upload this thing. I was so nervous about sharing something, but I was like, there's nothing else like this.
Yeah.
I want to be able to share this. And so about that time frame, a guy reached out to me, uh, James Russell, who's a Canadian guy, another Ontario guy like Tyson, and
Mm-hmm.
he goes, "Hey, I really like what you did. I found this other barn that's in a map. What do you think? Do you think this would be, worth doing?" I said, "I'll take a look at it." And I found it. It was in Chippewa County map, which is that was a one released by Tired Iron Modding,
Mm-hmm.
I believe.
Yeah, I
Oh, I
believe
really
so.
like this barn. And I went through that. I spent a ton of time on that. I learned how to do the nav mesh for that. Um, I added a ton of detail items to it. I just tried to round it out. Because about that point, I think that Modding Welt USA pack had come out. I mean, and that stuff's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's even the USA pack, I think, is still through the eyes of a European person who may not fully get all of the same stuff as an American would, but they did such an excellent job on it. The detail, I love it. Um,
Nice.
and so I was trying to mimic their detail, and I still get lot of compliments on that one, and that was one of my early pieces that I had done. Um,
Wow.
and yeah, the amount of reaction that I got from people, it was amazing. And it's not your typical players. There's, if you looked at the market of who's playing Farming Simulator,
Mm-hmm.
there's young guys like us,
Yep.
but you got a bunch of older guys. You got guys in their 50s and 60s that grew up on their uncle's farms, or their parents had a farm, and they weren't able to work the logistics on how to manage a farm, or whatever it may be. Just the opportunity may not have been there, but they have all these wonderful memories of farming.
Mm-hmm.
So I start making this stuff and I'm putting it out, and people are like, well, hey, I know what that is. Hey, I worked in one of those as a kid. And so I caught a whole different player base, I guess.
Yeah.
It just, wow, it's different. It's catering, you know, the the big combines and the big articulated and the 9RX and all those that plays to a certain type of person. But in a lot of groups, like you find old school farming, tired iron, those kind of places, you're finding, I think, a more seasoned, an older guy that's maybe reliving some of his glory days or his childhood or some of that stuff. And that's, I guess, the difference.
Oh, yeah, no, that's really cool. And people, that's the beauty of modding for farming sim. It's possible to create any kind of experience you want, right? And
Yep.
it takes a lot of work to make those experiences. And I'm sure there are a ton of people that are really thankful for you and what you're doing. And, you're providing these, like you said, unique niche experiences that people want. And you have, there are dozens of modders doing the same similar things, the same 60-foot implements and, massive grain crop implements, but you have a unique experience. You know something that not a lot of other people might know, and you're able to create that and make that for people, and it's really cool.
Yep. No, that's it. Like I say, I started out making mods for me
Mm-hmm.
because this is what I wanted to see, but I want to share it with people because even if they weren't the best, I had a if you go in some of my early mods, is I was putting readmes in everything. I was trying to be very detailed,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a disclaimer with everything. You know, I know so little about modding. If you feel that something should be improved, please do. If you want to use anything about what I did, please do. Um, this is a community. It's not about egos, or it shouldn't be about egos. It's not about what I did, because what I did is such a minor contribution in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I say, I'm just moving the Lego pieces around to build something that somebody might like.
Yeah. No,
You know,
that's amazing, and I think that's a really great view to have on it. I think
yep.
that's really cool. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the future of farming sim, because this is kind of a hot topic right now, and I kind of want to get a lot of people's thoughts and opinions on this, because everybody's got a thought, everybody's got an idea. So we're kind of expecting a new farming simulator game as of right now, March 21st, 2021, when this is being recorded. We're expecting a new farming simulator game to kind of be announced somewhat soon, especially since they've already taken off a year. I'm assuming they kind of want to get one out there. What would you personally like to name? Can you name something that you would like to see in farming sim that you doubt is going to happen? And can you name something you would like to see in farming sim that you think can be done and should happen and is likely to happen?
Well, I mean, I think the thing that everyone talks about what they'd like to see uh, into the base version of the game is everyone talks season. Everyone wants to see how Giants can tie it all in.
Right.
Real must modding, who released season,
Mm-hmm.
they do a really good job of tying it all in. I know that people who are involved with Giants directly, so they have a much better working knowledge of the coding and everything, so they're able to integrate so much better.
Yeah.
But I still think that Giants has got to have some ability to integrate that. So we're not chasing some of the foliage map. That's
Yeah.
I would like to see it still be an option
Mm-hmm.
so that you can turn off seasons
No,
because
I agree.
there's so much of whether it's just doing testing or just having an easygoing game save. Not
Yeah.
everyone wants to get hardcore, nitty gritty, full on realism gameplay, but to give the option, it's choose your own adventure. How do you want to do it?
Exactly. We should be able to
Uh,
play farming sim the way you want to play it. Have your own adventure, farm the way you want to farm. And I think, yeah, it definitely should be an option. Either start like the classic way it's always been, where you start with a bunch of fields that are in random states or growth or harvest, or an option to start in the spring with a bunch of fallow fields, or maybe even start in the summer with a bunch of planted and growing fields. But I agree it should be an option, and I definitely agree it should be part of the base game, and I think a lot of people do too, and I think a lot of people suspect it'll probably be part of the next base game based on how closely they're working with the seasons people.
right.
So
Um,
what were you going to say?
as for something, that I'd like to see that I don't think or isn't likely, man, I don't know. It's
Your pipe dream.
my pipe dream. Something for the farm building, make farm building more simple, I guess. You know, I am not talking about playing The Sims and having to do, walls and floors of different kinds and whatnot, but I feel like as great as the placeable stuff has come so far,
Mm-hmm.
it could be leaps and bounds better.
Oh yeah, and it could.
And yeah, just carrying on that of, improving that, but that's still really not a pipe dream. That just seems like logical evolution of the game.
Right. We kind of
Um,
hope we get that evolution. We hope this system improves for the next game rather than we just get the same system copy pasted over. Is that what you're trying to say?
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, you got to think that they've had a couple years to play with this. Um, some good system improvements and the processes and how everything work. Um, that's just take it up the next notch because there's a pretty good difference between 17 and 19. Um, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
So that's all I can hope for.
I hope they keep
That's yeah,
modding somewhat still approachable. I thought about that a fair bit. I hope modding is still approachable
yeah,
for the next version. I mean, it kind of has to be, right, for them to maintain the same community. I know the jump to 17 to 19 was sort of difficult. Some XML stuff changed. A lot of the engine and like visual stuff changed. What with U dimming and all that other
yeah.
stuff, and the scripts didn't translate over well either. A lot of the
No,
stuff got rewritten and a lot of stuff had to be remade. So I just hope that the next version of the game is similar to 19 and pretty approachable and learnable, and it doesn't take months to get things back to get people understanding again, because it took a while to get people going with
right,
all the little details and things you can do with the new version. So
right. No, I've had my fingers into some of the 17 stuff enough now to see how much, difference there is and what it takes to convert all the scripting over.
yeah.
Um, I feel like that's always going to be a growing pain of the new version.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's an unfortunate side effect that they're not intentionally doing stuff like that just to make everyone's lives harder. It's just refining the systems. Um, if
Yep.
you look through a lot of the logic it went into scripting, say, a grain wagon in 17, and how then if you needed to script that into 19, 19 is a lot more simplistic than how it was done in 17. They're making logical advancements to how XMLs are done.
Yeah.
Uh, so I would argue it's an improvement, even if it's not always seen as an improvement. Uh, the Lua scripting, yeah, no, they lost everything and started over from scratch. I remember when Farmer Shuby would be a European guy who came out with the scripting. I forget what he calls it, but it's a fill type mover, maybe something like that. And that's how we got our first placeable fermenting buildings. I think that I had the first fermenting upright silo working released. I don't think it was very good, and it was very quickly replaced by something much better than what I could create.
Mm-hmm.
But in whatever small group that I was working in, I had the first one, and it's still the common script being used for a lot of placeable buildings to do, input X and it comes out as Y.
Mm-hmm.
It works very efficiently for that. Global Company has taken over some of that. Not everyone is um, ready to just jump into Global Company. Um, that's one of the funny things that I do see among a lot of players is we get hesitant sometime about jumping into different stuff. Maze Plus, I wanted nothing to do with Maze Plus. I was talking to Tyson a ton on development of Mercer County, his
Yeah.
edit of it.
Mm-hmm.
And man, he kept pushing this Maze Plus on me, and I'm like, I don't know. When I sat down, I played it. I go, oh man, I get why he's doing this. This completely all makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh, so maybe that's a reasonable improvement. You know how some of the Maze Plus improvements and how it changes feeding and all that. That would be something that I would love to see more incorporated in a future version of Farming Sim, taking more look at the animal husbandry side of stuff and
Mm-hmm.
making it more realistic, I guess.
Yeah, we've had the same TMR system for a while now. They changed it a little bit game to game, but it's the same basic requirements and things. It could be deeper.
Right. I mean, and I'm not expecting some mini game of, going into the milking parlor or whatever and milking cows and that's the sequence.
Yeah, no.
I don't think we want that level.
Mm-mm.
But at the same time,
Yeah.
there's got to be something more than what it currently is.
Mm-hmm. Just adding depth. That's all we really want, is for this game to have the capability to go deeper out of the box. For example,
Yep.
like if we have seasons, I just thought of this, but if we had seasons in the base game, then could we try buying different brands of seed that have different pros and cons? More flood resistant ones, more drought resistant ones, in case we think the weather's going to do something. Just things like that. Just
Right.
make the game a little bit deeper and more involved if we're gonna go there. So
Right. Which, I mean, the challenge with that is, I'm not saying that Farming Simulator is an arcade style game, but it sort of is, because you can drop in with very little knowledge of farming and play and have a really great time.
mm-hmm.
If you start adding a lot of the choices, and you have to bear the consequences of those choices, i.e. picking the wrong seed type or whatever, you're more likely to lose people, I guess.
Yeah.
It was actually, when Tyson was doing Mercer County, I swear I'm going to stop talking about Tyson. He had his own podcast.
Yeah.
But we got that discussing it and saying, okay, well, all these different stuff that he was adding. I stopped at one point. And I said, do you ever question if you're adding too much? Because there becomes the point of diminishing return, where you can add so much detail to something.
Mm-hmm.
Is anyone, I know I play stuff like that, and I get into such detailed stuff that I know no one else is going to want to play like this, or feel like that, maybe. And maybe there are plenty of other people out there that want to get crazy realistic with Farming Sim that I'm just not thinking about. I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah, no,
because
that's
you have to make it universal.
Yep, and I talked about this last time, but this is a common theme across all these games is, if you can go down two paths, and if you go too far down the hardcore path, you lose a lot of the casual gamers. There are a lot more casual gamers than there are hardcore gamers. And Giants kind of has it in a sort of sweet spot right now where they can really appeal to the casual crowd. Things are fine, but they're basic, and modders will take care of the rest.
They really do.
It's interesting, and I think a lot of the more hardcore players would like to see them add some more features, and obviously you don't want it to go too far down that route. You might really love it if you're a hardcore player, but at the very minimum, then you have to have the ability to turn it off and keep it simple, you know? And you have to make it clear to the player what they're getting into if they go into a hard mode, if they're going into a seasons gameplay, because, you know, seasons adds a whole, you know, you have the capability of losing money. If you play farm sim
very quickly.
Yeah, if you play farm sim normally, you know, without seasons, it's if you're low on money, just don't buy anything, plant some seeds and wait, and then harvest it and then get money later. But seasons adds the ability for, you know, you sit there day after day, week after week in the different months, and your loans build up, and that kind of stuff happens. So it would add a major intimidation factor to playing the game and might scare away casuals. But I guess kind of to wrap up my kind of wordy statement here is it has to be toggleable, and they have to be careful about how far down that road they go.
Right. Because, you know, I've got some in-laws that are younger. My brother-in-law is 15 now, and he was playing 17, so he was 13 years old playing FS. But they're farm kids. You know, they've got a couple hundred acres themselves, so it's more straightforward to him. And so he plays, and he'd be one of the people that I wouldn't see necessarily wanting to do the hardcore play.
Yeah.
But so he gets. I've got a little one. My little guy is 6.
Yeah.
And we're trying to entice him a little bit more into playing, and he gets it to a degree. He likes driving stuff around.
Sure.
And I know that you can't cater an entire game to trying to make it playable for kids under 10.
Yeah.
But that's what sells games. From that aspect is making it appeal to such a broad range, because kids are a core market of this stuff.
Yeah. And maybe the way it is now is the best way for things to be. Maybe farming sim will just need modders to make those kinds of experiences. But yeah. So, interesting conversations. We can definitely hope for more things from the next game. It doesn't have to be difficulty. It can be, simple features like more equipment, more ways to farm, more things to farm, and placeable. Yeah.
I'd love to see, used equipment.
Yeah, that gets brought up a lot.
Front. That seems like a basic one.
Yeah, that gets brought up a lot, and that's a really good point. And, I could see like some sort of, how they have a randomized mission system. They could have a randomized used equipment sale system where you're not able to, kind of like real life. You don't just instantly find the used equipment you want on the secondary market. Sometimes you have to wait and jump on an opportunity, and, you'll have to buy some new stuff, I guess, to get going, but you have the opportunity to save money later with used equipment. I think a lot of people would like that too. And maybe you can make it so some things could only be bought used. Maybe you make some older equipment and you don't find it on the new storefront. You only find it on the used storefront. So, and maybe that's available permanently. I don't know. I'm kind of going down the rabbit hole of that, but I think a lot of people would love to see that. So,
I do believe there is a mod currently that's doing something like that. I don't know if it's the most refined one yet.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
I haven't heard of it.
I've heard of it. I've heard mixed reviews on it. I haven't tried it personally, so I got no idea. I got no dog in that fight.
Yeah.
But it does, they haven't been making John Deere 4020s in a long time. And I'm very thankful that everyone went through and we have a nice UDIM version of the 4020. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
The reality is you don't see gorgeous 4020s as often as you do in farming sim.
No, and they're not doing farm work. They're at shows.
Yep. And so that'd be a really neat concept, especially you get into a new game save of some sort, and your only option is you either got to buy new, or man, there's this really crummy old tractor that this is what's available right now, and you have to buy this crummy old tractor, and you're gonna have to bear with it for X amount of time until you can find a suitable replacement.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have a wear system in the game right now where the longer you own a piece of equipment, the faster it wears down over time. And
Yep.
you could you could have that for used equipment. It's going to wear out a lot faster, and it gives you an incentive to buy new equipment, and you don't only use used equipment. But
Well,
it's a really good point.
I think that's how that the current mod that's out there works is you whatever you buy for on the used side of it. I don't know exactly how it all works, but it has an already accrued wear value.
Ah,
So just like something new, you've got, let's say, 500 hours of good use out of it, and after that, it really starts petering off. Well, it's
yeah.
already got 499 on it,
Mm,
or it might have 300 hours of use on.
yeah. You could. Yeah.
I'm not I'm not terribly well versed on all that, but that's my understanding of it.
No, but yeah, that's a really good example of something that I think it's a little less likely to maybe be in the next game, because a part of that too is manufacturers don't like they want everybody that plays the game and uses their equipment to have the best possible experience, right? That's part of their deals. That's why
Exactly.
you don't have real car brands in GTA, because manufacturers don't like their things getting dented or blown up or whatever. So for those kind of reasons, it might be improbable that we could see that in the next game. But hey, there's an idea for any of you scripters out there with nothing better to do, or it's something it would be cool to see in the game. So anyway,
Yep.
no, that's really awesome. I think we're gonna wrap up about here. We've been talking for 50 minutes, which is awesome. Is there
Holy
any?
crap.
Yeah, I know, right? Time flies with these things. You don't think it's gonna be that long, but it is. Um, do you want to say anything before we sign off here? Is there any shout out? Obviously, shout out any of the social media platforms you use, where to find you, what you're working on, why people should be interested in following you.
Yeah. So I'm Mark Perry. You see me on Facebook as Mark Farmer Perry, which is a nickname that I picked up in school. Um, but I'm JMF Modding. I've got a Facebook page. I'm pretty active on that. I try to be really good about keeping up with messages and whatnot. Um, if you go, there's a couple of really good groups to follow. Old School Farming being, I think, my primary one.
Yep.
You search my name in there, you will find a mess of stuff, a mess of information, and a mess of posts.
Yeah.
It's That's a really good page to be a part of. It actually shows I had a whole build up on how to make ear corn work in the map that I did it on, um, and all the trials and the failures and everything was sort of neat. Um, I'm also sort of on Discord. I'm still relatively new to that. Um, there's a I'm basically just in Tyson's page on his Discord group, whatever they're called. I don't know.
Yep.
Uh,
You can go to the Deniz
and
Farms Discord group. I think the link is on his page.
Yep. I'm usually I'm keyed in on there. I got it through the phone, so I if you find me, I'm pretty easy to track down. For shout outs for people, no, I gotta thank um, people like Tyson. Tyson was one of the people that has helped motivate me here more. Um, you know, James Russell is a good friend of mine. He runs a Facebook as a group. It's JR's FS19 edits or something along those lines. I'm an admin, I guess. Uh, but he was someone who helped motivate me a ton. Um, Harry Armstrong, he makes some awesome buildings. Him and I are always bantering back and forth. He's become like a really good friend that I've met through the FS19 community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Dustin Hertzler, he has been a very crucial part in a lot of what I've done. He's a good motivator. And then the Quebec guys, we're also regional. With the North American guys in the Quebec, the French speaking guys, they sometimes get a little bit excluded. They've got their own, Quebec official group. But I've got, guys like Remy. I'm gonna butcher his last name, Flame. Um, yeah, he's been an awesome guy to have. We've worked a ton on stuff. I've helped him on some projects in the past.
Awesome.
I'm part French Canadian, so I can align with those guys pretty good.
Yeah, there's a lot of Canadians in the community, in the North American modding community for sure. So good to be aligned with those
Yep.
people. Um, If you're watching the video, I think this gameplay is me on Bucks County, which is a map you edited to handle shell corn. And it should be me shelling corn on Bucks County. So if you like how this map looks, and just in general, you should go check out JMF Modding. He does really high quality stuff, good attention to detail. He's 100% worth checking out. You can find him on Facebook and Discord. I'm Rooster. You can find me on the Facebook page Rooster Mods, and you can find me on Tyson's Discord too. But anyway, guys, this has been In The Endrows. Thank you for coming. If you're still listening at this point, well, like, props to you. It's been a while, so thank you so much. Thank you for joining me today, JMF. You've been a real pleasure to have on the show.
Well, thank you for reaching out to me, Rooster. I appreciate it.
Of course. Maybe we'll do another one of these again in the future. You're a good guest.
Of course.
All right. Thank you for watching, guys, and this has been Rooster signing off.